Hello and welcome to Podtoid. We are your hosts. I'm CJ.
I'm Chris.
I'm Charlotte.
I'm Occams.
And this is episode 420. It is good to be back. Unfortunately, Dan is not with us for this week as he is at EGLX this weekend, which is a shame because when I started putting this show back together, he explicitly asked me if we were going to continue the numbering from the previous Podtoid so that we can get to episode 420. And now he's not here for
and
it.
He's not here for it. Well, what can I say other than Snoochie?
No.
Something.
No.
Something.
No.
Hey, remember that Because I Got High song? That was funny, wasn't it?
All right, this has been Podtoid. Y'all have a good one now.
You know, the sad thing is, I almost recorded that soundbite and was going to play it throughout the show. But then I thought, Occams will hate me if I do that.
A little bit.
There was this. It was basically the dawning of a new decade brings like with it a new weed obsession.
Yes.
Because it was like the early 2000s, wasn't it, where that kind of kicked off again and everyone was back into the 420 and the Because I Got High and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back and all of that. And then it was in the early 90s when I was growing up, it was like 91, 92, that like white kids all started wearing jackets that said Spliffy on them and had like a little cartoon character with a massive spliff in his hand. And like everyone at school was wearing those jackets. And it seems like with the beginning of each new decade, everyone suddenly decides that they're smoking weed. So we're a couple of years away from a new instance of it, I guess.
It's going to be just people trying to deal with the world. That's why everyone's going to be getting high now. Just can't take anything. Give me a spliffy. Is that a British term for it? I don't think I've...
No, it was literally like a clothing company that all of their jackets and their shirts and that were all just based around like Jamaican iconography and stuff like that. And the company was actually just called Spliffy, and all these like, I didn't, but like so many of these like nerdy kids were just like going to school wearing these spliffy jackets and being like, smoked a reefer. And it was like, okay, you're 10, you're 11 years old. And then like 2000 hit and it came back big again, didn't it? Of people who don't take drugs pretending they take drugs. So I think would you a revisit?
When I was working in college radio, we had two songs that were banned that we could not play no matter what. One of them was Teaches of Peaches, and the other one was Because I Got High. Like, we could not play that. Even in my graveyard shift of a show that aired at 1 a.m., could not play that fucking song.
And the irony was, it had nothing to do with, like, the content. It was just no one wanted to hear that song.
No. The irony is I lived in Humboldt County, which you're foreigner, so you wouldn't know this, but it is the weed capital of California, that we could not play the song about weed.
I think my main concern isn't so much the resurgence of people smoking weed, because I think that's just part of the norm now. Right. My main concern is resurgence of people thinking Sublime was a good band.
Hey, they had that song, that one song that they had.
I've forgotten which one it is.
I know 40 Ounces to Freedom from beginning to end, and I hate myself for it. And it is tattooed on my soul, and I cannot remove it. I want to take the ears off, but I can't. Jesus.
Are Sublime the guys who did that song about Chinese food making you sick, or is that another band?
No. Oh my God. That was on the radio yesterday as I was driving home from work.
It's Bare Naked Ladies, and bless your heart for thinking that was Sublime.
No, it's not Bare Naked Ladies.
Yes,
I'm sure of it.
It's the boy band, right? It's LFO. New Kids on the Block had a bunch of hits. Chinese food makes me sick, and I get fly when girls walk by in the summer. I like girls that. Oh God, fuck! I know all those lyrics.
Stop, CJ, stop.
Oh yeah, I remember. And then it like goes da 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 da. At least in heaven I can skate. Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
Guys, I smoke 2 joints in the morning. I smoke 2 joints at night. I smoke 2 joints in the evening. It makes me feel all right. I died of a heroin overdose and left a wife and child behind. The Aristocrats.
I don't know if you guys know this, but Billy Shakespeare wrote a whole bunch of sonnets.
You are listening to Whitetoid.
Yeah. How did you know it was LFO and not the Bare Naked Ladies? That's a good pull.
No, I was serious. They were legit on the radio yesterday as I was coming back, or not yesterday, on Friday when I was coming back from work. Yeah, I have set a Sirius XM for free for 3 months with my new car, and I have it on the 90 station because I have terrible taste in music, and fucking that was the song. Ugh.
That's great. I only listen to NPR, speaking of Whitetoid, so I wouldn't know.
Boy, we got way off topic.
Sorry.
So Dan is not here, unfortunately. We may have to do next week's show as episode 420 part 2, but he should be back next week with a full report on the convention, or he'll just talk about the Garfield pizza he ate. It could honestly go either way with him. We could get 2 seconds of getting convention details and then 10 minutes on Garfield shaped food.
Yeah, so for anyone, obviously, people listening who don't know, while he was away at EGLX, he also, is it called Garfield Eats?
I think it's Garfield Eats, yes.
He used the Garfield-based food delivery service that gave him is it a Garfuccino or something, and a Garfield-shaped pizza. And here's the kicker: it wasn't good. Might come as a surprise.
You know, when I saw the pictures he posted, it kind of reminded me of all the soldiers like standing up watching a nuclear bomb go off 10 miles away, like just out in the open. I just kind of had this. It like had the same energy.
I mean, a regular, like a good pizza and a good cappuccino just sounds like an awful mix as it is. I don't know why you would go for Garfield versions of those things.
And why is it not lasagna? Why was it not, like, lasagna is what Garfield's obsessed with? I don't get it.
For fucking years, I looked at Garfield strips as a kid, and I was just like, "What's lasagna?" Like,
Lasagna.
Garfield loves his lasagna.
Lasagna is the guy on the corner you buy your bootleg Simpsons Blu-rays from.
Lasagna. Oh. So look forward to that next week. But in the meantime, we actually have a good show for you today. We're going to talk some Ninja Saviors, some Overwatch on Switch, Metal Gear Solid 5, Planescape Torment, and more. And be sure to stay tuned after the show for a new installment of Spoilsport, where Chris and I will be talking about the Joker. I actually have a clip from it right here.
Cursed utility belt again! I swear by all that's funny, I shall never be foiled by that insidious, unconstitutional device again!
I'm sorry, that's the wrong clip. I'm sure I'll have the right one for the show though. But
I fucking wish it was that Joker.
Also, for listeners, take a shot every time CJ calls the film The Joker when the film's clearly called Joker.
Joker, yeah, no, that's something I've been doing, and then I've been seeing it a lot in like newspapers, not newspapers. I don't read the newspaper, but online news and blogs like that. Yeah, you're right. They do call it The Joker when it is just Joker. Before we get talking about games, we're actually going to talk about The Blob, and no, I'm not referring to my ex-wife. This is a blob that is actually...
You're all right.
Damn it.
I shouldn't be laughing this much at my own jokes, but you might have seen this in the news, but the Paris Zoological Park, it's zoological, is putting this thing on display that's called the Blob. It's called that, or it's called the slime, because it really doesn't fit into any of the established categories known for known living creatures. This thing has no brains, but apparently can figure out its way out of a labyrinth. It has 720 different sexes, and I don't know how you figure that out. I mean, it can heal itself like Wolverine. You can cut it in half, and it puts itself back together. Its favorite food is oatmeal, which, again, how did they figure this out? Its official name is Physarum polycephalum, which means the many-headed slime. Also, the species is believed to be about 1 billion years old, so it predates basically everything that we know. This went on display at the zoo on Saturday. Occams, would you ever go to a zoo just to see slime? I mean, if I wanted to see slime, I'd just look under my kitchen sink.
Yeah, and that's certainly fair. But to see slime that is essentially better than all of us, yes, I would. 720 sext, a billion-year old, seemingly immortal, and can heal itself immediately. Slime, yeah, that's like a Warren Ellis comic book creation right there. It's wonderful. I saw pictures of this, and it's science fiction come to life, and I'm very happy. I look forward to someone eating it and becoming like the alpha slime, just yeah.
Do you think as we speak, it's just like slowly devouring the area that they've put it in, and it's just getting larger and like
Very much.
We're gonna need to call like 19-year-old Steve McQueen to come and take care of it, I think.
Who? No, I'm kidding.
That's what everyone's saying at home.
Yeah.
Steve who?
Yes, I imagine 50 years this thing's just gonna like devour half of the planet. Although its arch nemesis is apparently dry weather, so just so long as this planet doesn't get any drier or hotter, it should it'll take over everything.
Oh, just got an M. Night Shyamalan weakness.
M. Night Shyamalan.
To be fair, the blob did say at the end, "The end?" question mark.
Very true.
Apparently they found one in Texas like back in the 70s, but then it quickly died. I wonder how often this has been found, but then people just like bleach it to kill it because I think it's just mold.
God, what if that was like the thing, like it was everywhere, but it just when people are like, this is, fucking, I'm trying to clean my kitchen, and they just put some bleach on it, and it's trying to take over, but this mundane shit is stopping it,
keeping it back.
Also,
if billion-year-old thing.
If you like the slime and like the idea of it, Warren Ellis wrote a comic called Super God that you should read because something like that plays heavily into it.
So if they're keeping it in like a zoo, essentially, like do they have to feed it? Is it like self-sufficient, or do they have to like provide it with sustenance or what? Like,
so they grew it in a petri dish where they fed it oatmeal and then just determined that's its favorite food. I think its favorite food is oatmeal in the same way that people think gorillas love bananas.
Or Garfield loves lasagne.
Yes. But then they moved it to a stump or a log in the zoo, and that's what it's sustaining itself off of. So now it's just going to town on that wood.
This is it. This is like
real quick. Can we take a moment to acknowledge what CJ just said? Just going to town on that wood.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that was acknowledged. Okay. Thank you.
Forgotten where I was going, don't we?
Let's go ahead and move on to start talking about games. I'll go ahead and kick us off this week. This past week, I've been playing Overwatch, but instead of taking away from what I should be doing at Destructoid, it's actually been my job for Destructoid because I've been playing it on Switch. This is the port that came out on the, I want to say 14th. I should have written that day down. It is a Switch port of the very popular Overwatch hero team-based shooter that's probably coming about 2.5 years too late into the Switch lifespan, life cycle, whatever it is. There are a lot of sacrifices that had to be made to get this to run on Switch. I've put 2.5 years of my life into the PlayStation 4 version. I know it like the back of my hand. So going into the stages, they're all the exact same shape. All the layouts are the same. All the places you can hide behind, the platforms, those are all the same. But so many of the details are missing. And it's kind of, this is what gives the places their personality. And if there's anything that this game is missing, it has all the characters, has all the weapons, has all the skins, has everything you can unlock in the other versions of Overwatch in the Switch version, but it's missing a lot of the personality. When you start out in I can't remember any stage names now, but
Junkertown.
Okay, Junkertown actually is a good one. They have the bike there that everyone destroys at the beginning of the match. But there's not much else. And when you go back to the Pachimari vending machine, there's no plush toys in there. There's a lot of the stuff that's on the walls and on shelves just no longer is there. When you're in, I want to say Vienna, for you have the big banners that are right outside of your of the starting point. Banners
Sure.
aren't there anymore. I don't think there are any banners anywhere in this. So those are a lot of the sacrifices that had to be made. But the biggest one is definitely the
Human rights, no.
yeah. Okay, so the second biggest one then is the frame rate. The game runs at 30 frames per second. It does not consistently run at 30 frames per second on stages where you have a lot going on. If you have all 12 characters there at once, it will slow down. I can't tell you what it will slow down to, but it doesn't become like a slideshow or anything. But it is certainly noticeable, definitely when you compare it to Overwatch on any other system where it's rock solid 60 on my PlayStation 4 Slim. And 60 frames per second isn't something that the Switch isn't capable of doing because Paladins, Rocket League, Mortal Kombat 11, Splatoon 2, those all do 60 frames per second in gameplay. There are certain moments from them where they don't do 60 frames per second, as their compromises for getting on the Switch. So that was the deliberate choice made by Blizzard. And as I said in my port report, if you don't have experience with the superior versions of Overwatch, you'll probably be just fine with it. In the same way that when I bought Call of Duty shooters on my Nintendo Wii, I was fine with it knowing that there were better options out there. It's not something I'm going to keep playing, especially since I couldn't bring over my account from my PlayStation 4 to my Switch. So I am not looking forward to unlocking the hundreds of sprays, skins, the poses, everything that I've worked tirelessly to get in the PlayStation 4 version. I can't bring myself to do it again on Switch.
It's maybe how the sausage is made is a little more difficult than I realized, but the idea that you can't transfer your account information and bring it over is asinine to me. I mean, you had 2 years on the PS4 version? I mean, that's 2.5. That's so much time. And I think about all the skins I've unlocked, like some of the Halloween skins I have and some of the seasonal ones. There's no way in hell I would just start again, even on the Switch. There's no way. Ugh. Time's too precious as it is as an adult,
And like you say, although there's so much of it is red tape and it is just about licensors and publishers and that, it's such a problem that we shouldn't be having as we approach like 2020. It's like I've got Siege on 2 platforms. I've got Siege on PC and I've got Siege on a PS4, and I'm logged in with Uplay on both of them. But sometimes when I get codes for like cool little accessories and stuff, and you highlight the codes on the website, it's like, okay, which platform do you want to use it on? And it's like it's a one-time use, and it's like, well, can I just have them in both? Like, you've got both the options on screen there, but I don't know. This is all stuff above my pay station of who they need to talk to and what contracts need signing and who has to get in a room. It's like getting the 007 rights or getting Spider-Man. I don't know. You know what I mean?
All right, let's go ahead and move on to Charlotte, who is back on that Metal Gear Solid 5 grind. Charlotte, how is the game going?
That
good,
the thing
huh?
is, this is why I don't like review games pretty much ever, because the act of reviewing a game actually but anyway, I have to try really, really hard not to let tedium of just repetition towards the end of games, which in certain types of games there is repetition a lot of the time and people like that stuff. But for me, it just I get to a point where I'm like, can it just be over? And that just ruins my entire impression of the game. But I think so far I've managed to sort of fight against that tendency and to remain balanced. But yeah, with Metal Gear Solid 5, it's not quite got to that stage, but it's getting there. And it's like, I'm at the bit where you have to rescue 5 different child soldiers, and they're all 5 different side quests. And it's just like, why did it have to be 5? Why can't it just be 2? Why does it have to be? And actually, it's okay in a way, because as I put down in my notes, the third one, there's actually no enemy troops to fire against. Mm-hmm. All you have to fight against is 2 bears. And I sniped both of them, and then Fulton extracted them, and now they're in my zoo. So that's nice.
Legit bears.
Yeah, legit. So there's a lot of repetition at the moment, and it's not quite grating against me, but I'm worried it's getting to that level, and I'm kind of hoping that it's sort of the repetition and the doing the same sort of quest over and over again, like the ones that you have to do to finish the game. I'm hoping that sort of starts to come to a close. Otherwise, I'm going to have to fight really, really hard for it not to ruin the experience, because I'm having a really great time with the game. I've been playing it for two and a half. Since it was last on PS Plus, I've been playing it on and off, and I just did not want the game to end, which is why I've stretched it out so long, because I really adore certain aspects of the game. But whenever a game starts to get into like it's sort of, instead of going out with a bang, it starts to go into its death throes and it starts repeating stuff, and it's stuff that you have to do. It's just like, is this really necessary? Like, I feel like a lot of games in the PS3 and PS4 era do a lot of unnecessary side questing and repetition, where it's just like, if you'd made the game 10 hours shorter, it would be better for it, you know?
There's quite a few moments, I think, in, like you say, in games from that generation where you're pretty sure you're bearing down on like the ending of the game, and then something happens and you're like, oh, you're actually sending me off over here. And it always, not necessarily saying they make games in chronologically, the campaigns chronologically, but there's a lot of times in that era where you feel like the tension's building up for the climax, and then the game goes, but can you just go and do these 3 things over here first? And I think that really takes away sometimes from the ending a lot of those games.
Yeah, I think a lot of PS3, and when I say PS4, I mean kind of earlier PS4 games, the developers seem to think that a long game is a good game, and that when people are enjoying games, they just want to keep playing it and not play anything else. And like that, for like games that aren't really, really geared towards multiplayer, that's, for me, is just not the case. Sometimes a really, really good game can still outstay its welcome, and I just kind of want to see a conclusion. And if I want to do, side questing afterwards, then that's always nice to leave the option open to like recommence with my save at a certain point. But like holding the ending back from me for me, without me having a choice, because you think, oh, this person wants to continue playing the game for another 100 hours, just like, fuck that. Like, I've got a life, I've got games to play.
I think that's why Breath of the Wild resonated with so many people, because when you wanted to finish the game, you could just go finish it. Like, it lasted as long as you wanted it to last. And I think I hope more games in the future take from that concept and allow you to, like, there's 100 hours of content, but if you're bored with it after 20 hours, you can just go kill the final boss in 20 hours in and watch the ending.
And I think the thing is like whenever I review a game, I always try and put in, like, slip into there how long a game took to finish, and I think this is part of the problem with what you're saying, Charlotte, is I think publishers are being told that people want games to be really long, because I see it everywhere. It's not just in my reviews, but I see it everywhere. People who are just like, you expect me to pay X amount for X amount of hours.
Yeah.
And, is it Untitled Goose Games like less than 90 minutes long, right? Something like that.
To get to the ending, but then there's post game content.
Okay.
Yes.
And I finished Gris last year in 1 3-hour setting, and that's like $20. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's the complicated thing, is I think sometimes people are vocal about wanting games to be longer because of how much they're spending on them. And I think publishers are just going, we have to make sure this game goes over 30 hours or whatever. I'm not disagreeing with you, Charlotte. I think you're right. I think games are too long. But I think the message is being sent to them that they're supposed to make these games long, or players get angry with them. It's mixed up. Tell you what I'm interested in, though. You mentioned the bears earlier that you took down. Have you found like there's like a super rare like white bear? Did you ever find him?
No, I know that there's a side quest to go and find some sort of rare bird, but I haven't ended up doing that. I've done a lot of the optional side quests, but I think now I'm just sort of not interested in, especially because I've got to finish it to a deadline. I'm not quite interested in going and doing all the extras. I
think one of the problems I had with Metal Gear 5 is I got really distracted in not pushing forward, and I got distracted in like trying to find all the animals and all that kind of stuff. And that, as I said, I think it was last week, that's left me in a situation where now if I go back to the campaign, I don't have a fucking clue what's going on, and I might as well just start from scratch. I'm like, who's this character? Who's this guy with an eye patch? You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know. I had a lot of fun with the side questing stuff, but now it's like, especially because once I got that first ending, I was like, actually, no, I kind of want to see this come to a conclusion now. Something about having like a first ending and then a second ending, like having an ending right in the middle of the game rather than like having to revert back to an old save file to go and get the second ending. It just kind of made me sort of just want to get the second one and get it done, you know?
You can be like me and just go on YouTube and watch all of them. I do that with so many games I just get bored of.
I have a friend who sometimes does the same thing. He basically plays a game until he's not getting fun from it anymore, and then he'll just like go and watch the ending. And it's really funny because sometimes I think that he's winning. Do you know what I mean? That's the guy who's actually winning.
I mean, it's for people of a certain age, you know, like I forget who said it because it sure as hell wasn't me, but I read somewhere it's like the irony of being an adult is that you have the budget to buy all the games you want, but you don't have the time anymore. When you're, you know, a teenager, or maybe if you're in college and you have hours and hours to spend playing games and no money. But it really is. It's like at one point, like, what am I doing? Like my free time is so limited. Why would I waste it beating this game that I'm not enjoying? So thanks, YouTube.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not just about games as well. It's like I have other hobbies. Like I've really got back into reading, and also I travel a lot on the weekends. So it's kind of like time's too short, like life's too short to continue playing games that you're not totally into. And I mean, Metal Gear Solid 5 hasn't got to that anywhere near that point yet, and I would have to play it for my deadline anyway. But when it comes to all the other stuff on my shelf that I'm not too keen on, I'm not going to play that until I feel up to it, because I bought it, because I've just got other things to do.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to Chris. And Chris, this week you reviewed a remake of a classic game called Ninja Saviors, right?
Right, and talking of games that you can finish quickly, it's essentially the Ninja Saviors, The Return of the Warriors, which is a retitled version of a Japanese title, which is a remake of a SNES game, which is a remake of an arcade game. That's how we've basically gotten to this point. But the Ninja Saviors is an old arcade. It was by Taito, who were like kings of the arcade back in the day. And it came across, like I said in my review, during that time period where all anyone gave a shit about was ninjas in entertainment. It was ninjas all the time. It was Franco Nero in Enter the Ninja and Sho Kosugi in Return of the Ninja, a favourite of Occam's, as I know. And Michael Dudikoff was the American Ninja, and it was Ninja Turtles, ninjas. That's all anyone cared about. So around that time, we got loads of arcades that were like Shadow Dancer and Shinobi and Mystic Warriors and Ninja Gaiden and Dragon Ninja, or Bad Dudes, as I think you guys call it over there. And Ninja Warriors was one of these games, and it's kind of a brawler, but you only walk on one plane. You don't move into and out of the screen. You literally just move left and right. And it's a pretty hectic and tough title. And then they remade it for the SNES, where they gave it like new music, and they added an extra character and some extra levels and moves. And then what this new edition is, it's kind of a remake of both of them. It's like the SNES game rebuilt in an entirely new engine. So it feels kind of slicker and smoother, but keeps the aesthetic, it keeps the way it looks and the animation frames and all the moves and the stages and all that. And it also adds a couple of extra characters who are really good. And there's an irony that because those characters have been designed with a modern video game mindset, they're like the best way of playing the game, because people have looked at the game with like, 2018 mindset or whatever and gone, oh, let's put combos into the way these characters work. Like all the characters are built around combos, but these new characters have got like the experience of like, fucking 20 years of fighting games behind them. So, but this is the second remake Natsume have done. They also did that Wild Guns Reloaded, if you remember, which was another remake of a SNES game. And it's pretty good. Like the game itself is cool. It's fast paced. It's got great music. It's got really nice pixels, really nice sprites, and the animation on them is really kind of fluid. And it's got a great 80s arcade storyline. It's like set in the dystopian future of 1993, where there's like a president who he's like basically he's holding the country under a coup, and he's refusing to leave power. So the people build some ninja cyborgs to assassinate him, basically, and you pick one of these ninja cyborgs, and then you basically hand fight your way all the way to the president to like take him out in in his conclave or whatever. And other than that, it's just basic arcade action. It's simplified, but the fighting's kind of deep, even though it's kind of a brawler. It seems quite a slow game, but once you really learn how to adapt to how your character moves and the attacks they've got and the supers and the specials they've got, you can kind of get a real good flow on, where you're like flipping towards a dude, taking him out in the air. As soon as you land, you grab hold of another person, and then you run that person into a group of 3 other people, and then throw a ninja star behind your back to take out the other guy who's coming to the screen. And it takes a little practice, and it's not readily apparent you can play it that way. But once you've kind of learnt that, you can kind of get some really cool, like Michael Dudikoff shit going on. But there's not a lot to it other than what it is. There's no online mode, although you can play in local co-op. There's no gallery or museum or anything like that. You unlock these extra characters and you unlock higher difficulty modes, but essentially it is just that game. And it's a pretty good game. It's hard. I try not to make price comparisons, but it is the same price as that Capcom Beat 'em Up collection. And that's like 6 of these kind of games. And that does have like a museum and a gallery. And it has online play, but fuck that, because it's dreadful. It doesn't work at all. But it's still kind of 6 cool games as opposed to just 1 cool game for the same price. But if you're a completionist, there's no reason not to pick the Ninja Saviors up. You know what I mean? If you're just someone who wants to get revised versions of all those cool arcade titles. It's good stuff. There's like a physical edition of it as well, I think, that comes with like an art book and the soundtrack. The soundtrack's been remixed for the game, but you can unlock the original soundtrack, which is cool because like it's a really memorable one. Taito always did good soundtracks, and Ninja Warriors is one of their like best remembered. So it's cool that that's still in there. So yeah, it's a really easy game to just kind of describe. It's a very good arcade game that's come back. It's not changed a lot. Some stuff's been remixed and it moves slickly, but outside of the game itself, there's not a lot of extras to delve into, which kind of takes away from the experience a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the main things that you want to include when you're re-releasing old games, is because
like a history.
People who are going to buy it are going to be interested. They're interested in it more than just like, oh, I could play this again. Like, to give them more of it, to really give them reason to buy it again. I know, unless you're doing like a full, just built from the ground up new graphics engine for it, like Link's Awakening or something. If it still looks kind of the same as it did back on the SNES. Which, by the way, like, is that we always called it SNES? Like, we never did SNES. Is that again a Britishism?
It was kind of, it went both ways. I did know a couple of people who called it SNES. Like, I did know a couple of people who did, but everyone I knew, including myself, always said SNES.
Occams?
SNES for me.
Charlotte?
Sorry, I've lost track of it. You're asking whether I had a SNES or a Mega Drive.
No, we're asking if you pronounce it SNES or SNES, but you just answered that question for us.
Oh. I'm so tired. I'm sorry.
No problem.
So I guess yes, it was a European thing then.
It's you mentioned all the extras and stuff. I remember when they Final Fight, the HD re-release for Xbox 360. One of the extras you could unlock is the episode of the Street Fighter, the animated series cartoon that featured the Final Fight characters, and like that to me is just that's how you do it. That's what makes good great to me.
That Final Fight Double Impact really was like, this is how you re-release an arcade game and convince people to spend $20. It was 2 good games and so many unlockables, like so much fun stuff. And there's nothing wrong with the Ninja Saviors, Return of the Warriors. Like, it's a cool game, but you can't help but be like, so you've based this on a SNES game, and that SNES game is based on a different game. So there's got to be a wealth of stuff for both of those releases that you could put in here. But it's not by a huge publisher or anything like that, and it does the job. But I always feel, like you said, like we started this thread off, when you're releasing one of those games, it's not like you're going to do it again, so you might as well get everything this time.
So there was nothing in the game about teenage mutants that also happened to be turtles?
No, I think it came out in 87, which is about the same time. Is that the exact same year Turtles began? I think Turtles is either 87 or 88. So I guess they were probably in They're probably working at the same time. But there's plenty of ninjas in, and that's all anyone gave a shit about. It was just like, do you throw ninja stars and have a sword? And do you do that really fast kind of running where you like take 50 steps for every one step? And that's all anyone seemed to care about. But they're
I
also
care about
robots.
turtles.
I like the fact that there were also robot ninjas. It's like, what are people into? Robots and ninjas, robot ninjas.
And turtles.
Turtles got their own game, and it was great.
Well, it depends on which one you're talking about, because they also had a not-so-great game on the NES, which I called NES. But I assume you called NES.
That fucking underwater dam level.
Yep.
God.
That Turtles arcade was very good. I remember the first time I played that was when it had just come out, and I would have been like 9, something like that. And I remember being so excited playing that Turtles arcade that when I finished playing, I was like my legs were shaking from the adrenaline of like playing a fucking ninja. Remember I said I was like 9 years old, but like, and I'm just like mashing those buttons. And then when it finished, it was like I was almost physically shaking with excitement. And then they made that shit Simpsons one that everyone likes.
Ooh, that took an abrupt left turn.
I was going to say, how could you be shaking with adrenaline when there's such arcade classics that you could be shaking with adrenaline from, such as House of the Dead? But then I'm revealing my inability to think chronologically by saying that.
Yeah, that's about 12 years later, I think, or something, yeah.
Yeah. No sense of time or space.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up with Occam's and everything you played this week, starting with Planescape Torment.
Planescape Torment. So I got the 2-pack with Planescape Torment and Neverwinter Nights, which just always makes you think of Baywatch Nights for some reason. Yeah,
that's the one with ghosts, right? That's the one where they.
Yeah, they're
not
like
at first. At first, it was like a night. He was a private investigator, wasn't he? At first, who like solved crimes. But then like Buffy and X-Files got big, and when season 2 came along, he was literally fighting fucking vampires. But he was still a lifeguard. He was like a lifeguard during the day, and then he took down vampires. And there's an episode where he gets sucked into a video game as well.
Of course he did. Y'all, and this is just a tangent real quick. But do you remember in Reboot, whenever there was an incoming game in that one episode where it was the Evil Dead incoming game? I was happy. I was so happy when that episode came on. God, I was happy at that show.
I didn't know that was a thing, but I loved Reboot growing up.
Yeah, it's I have an art book for Reboot. It's great.
Holy shit, cool.
Yeah. I pre-ordered it from my comic shop at the time years ago. So Planescape Torment and Neverwinter Nights. What a strange beast. I think it's going to be people like me who played those when they were new and was blown away by the story and just the worlds and the ability to create these characters. And this was back when the CRPG kind of genre was still kind of relatively, I guess, new and novel. Because I remember the day I got Baldur's Gate. I bought it on PC the day it came out, and I remember the first thing you can do in that, like, you get a spell, you cast Magic Missile, and I was fucking blown away because it had like sound effects and like they would say the spell, like, and it was so cool. It brought all the Forgotten Realms of Dragonlance books to life for me. But then you play them, and they're ugly. And they're choppy and they're not great. I mean, they're great games, don't get me wrong, but playing these games in 2019 on like a nice television, like, they didn't clean them up too much. There's not really much they can do. If they want to rebuild them from the ground up, by all means, but they're artifacts and I cherish them and I love them. But it's sort of like writing a letter with a quill and ink versus using like a really nice like ballpoint pen. It's a strange thing to do, and it's almost a novelty. If you can play them, like, I think maybe GOG, Good Old Games or whatever it is now, has them to download and play on the PC. I mean, the controls they're not terrible, honestly. They're not great. There's a whole lot of L2, R2 kind of flipping around, and you forget which one is which. But they're fun. But they're interesting. I don't know if someone who's like 18 or 19 today picks this up and tries to, like, they love RPGs and they're like, oh, these are old school and real famous. I don't think they would get into them at all. because they were from a different time and a different era in gaming. But for someone like me who was there when it was new, I'll buy this and the Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 just to have on my shelf, to look at, to have fond memories of, to be happy that they exist in the way they do now. But strange beasts for sure.
The only thing I remember about Planescape Torment, if I'm thinking of the right game, is that the one that had that like purple or blue dude on the front cover.
The nameless one,
And
yeah.
is that his name? And obviously that's named the nameless one. But I always thought he looked like he should be a host for one of those Atmosphere/Nightmare board games.
Yeah, I can see that. And I say Planescape Torment has one of the most interesting like Dungeons and Dragons adjacent worlds ever created. It's just fucking weird, and it's so much fun. And I'm glad there's a game exists in that realm. And I'll say this about CRPGs is that despite the graphics not being great, the kind of hand painted, hand created the settings they do, even for like little towns and villages or the cities, they all look like miniature dioramas to me, and that's something that's really appealing to me, just as a weirdo who likes like dollhouses and stuff. Just like those little miniatures, it has that feel to it. It's very intimate and it's very small, and the music is wonderful too. So there's that.
Now, what are you playing these on?
PlayStation 4. Probably should have said that to begin with. Yeah.
In retrospect, how do you find the writing on these games?
Really good. It's
Holds up.
one of the things I really love is that they give you the option to pick, like, so you're like in at least in Neverwinter Nights when you're creating your characters, because you create your whole party and you can really min-max it, which is just a fun thing to try to, like, I've got a 19 strength, a 20 intelligence, and a 17 dexterity. You're basically like, I'm a fucking demigod day one. But you can pick your voice. So there's like, 3 options for like male fighter, female fighter, mage, thief, whatever. And they really went out to like give you these different kinds of characters, the type, like the personality wise, because you've got like the, all right, now we're gonna do this kind of, fighter, and then there's like the fighter that's like, I am death and I have come to take you now. Just kind of like, it's a whole this weird range of characters, and it's fun. It's really fun.
I want to make a video game just to hire you to do that death voice on it, because that was really good.
That was not a good death voice, man. I got close to the mic and spoke quietly because I couldn't really think of what else to do. It's not,
I kind of got it. I
could do like 1920s radio announcer, like, that kind of thing. So.
Okay, I'll make a game that requires both of those protagonists.
Talking about a dog, just something, Today the president was shot. It's kind of. It's but they're fun. They're strange beasts, and if you're slightly curious about like to see like the grandfather of where RPGs came from, at least Western RPGs, check them out. They're I don't want to say they're worth your time, but maybe watch some YouTube videos, and even if you don't want to buy them, like see if you can stick through a playthrough of like Planescape Torment just to see something really different that people aren't really doing nowadays, and it kind of bums me out.
And if you want to play a new CRPG that is maybe one of the best games of the year, I've heard nothing but good stuff about Disco Elysium, although it's only on PC right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's been on my list, but being PC only kind of makes me stay away from it a little bit, just because I don't want to, in case it comes to PS4, I don't want to ruin the chance to experience it new.
Yeah. Real quick, tell us what is Robot Carnival?
Well, I got to talk about a movie thing. So, I went down memory lane between these games and this movie. It's called Robot Carnival. So it was an anthology of 9 short films, done in 1987 by a whole bunch of famous anime people, including guys like Katsuhiro Otomo of Akira fame. And some of the music was done by Joe, I'm gonna say Hisashi, of Studio Ghibli fame. But it's one of, and like this is like prime. If you're into 80s anime, this is just fucking awesome. This was actually the first Japanime anime thing I ever saw. It came on TBS at like 3 a.m. and I thought maybe it was a fever dream because I didn't know cartoons could do this. Because when I was, God, I must have been, is 87, it's probably 90, I was probably about 10 or 11 when I saw it. and it just blew my mind. And so the anthology stories range from like action, horror, comedy, romance. They're all kind of robot themed, but they really at the time, like a lot of these people who were directing it and working on it were, were beginning to be people, but then would go on to be like become icons in the industry. I mean, this is like the Katsuhiro Otomo 87. I think Akira was just coming out at the time and was working on that. So it's really, really good. My favorites, I won't go through the whole list, but like my favorites of all the little list movies was called Cloud. And it is done in the same style. Remember the Human Nature video by Michael Jackson?
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of scratchboard etching. It's this robot walking through time, and the backdrop is animated with these clouds that depict different events in the universe, and it's really, really, really fucking beautiful. And the music is just stunning. The whole fucking. I actually went to try to find the soundtrack on eBay, and CD, vinyl doesn't matter. It's like $200 starting. So I'm just gonna have to. Yeah, I'm gonna listen to it on YouTube or something. But if you have to watch one and you kind of want something beautiful and poetic and sort of make your heart feel a little full, check out Cloud. But like then there's like crazy like robots fighting post-apocalyptic world shit. Oh, and like by the way, the creator of Fist of the North Star is one of the people who worked on this as well. And just all kinds of different stuff. It's really cool. It's a very famous sort of like mid 80s anime thing. And it's on Amazon Prime. Pretty sure it's just free on YouTube, and you could just find it streaming. It's not that hard to find. I picked up a copy on Blu-ray for like $10, so it's not super rare or anything. But it's called Robot Carnival, and if you want something weird and experimental and fun and like I said, 80s anime, watch Robot Carnival. It's worth your time. It's about 90 minutes long too, so it's not gonna kill you.
I haven't seen it, and I'm looking it up now, and it looks fucking awesome.
It
Like,
is.
I saw a fair bit of anime in the early 90s. We talked about my hilarious You're at Sukadoji t-shirt that I used to wear around the house. But like, this one passed me by. But I literally just Googled it, and I'm just on image search. It looks fucking amazing. I think I'm actually just going to go and watch this tonight. I think I'll just go buy it and watch it tonight.
Yeah,
we actually have a clip of it right here.
Hello, kiddies. Meet the Joker.
I'm sorry, that wasn't a clip of it. No, that's my bad. I gotta clean those up. Ugh, too many clips.
Why do you have to ruin everything I love?
That's what you get for being funnier than me on the podcast, okay?
Okay. All right. We'll continue this conversation off the air.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in the parking lot behind school.
Shit.
Fisticuffs.
Hell yeah.
I'll be there.
Cheeseburger eating contest.
I'll be there in my Spliffy jacket cheering you on.
You are listening to Podtoid.
That is it for games, but we still have some headlines to cover. It is time for the news. And there actually wasn't a lot to talk about this week. Just a lot of conventions happening on the weekend, including EGLX, where Dan is right now. And also, I think Paradox is having their own, where they made a few announcements. Crusader Kings 3, I think. I may be getting that name wrong, but that is coming.
Yeah, you're right.
So that's on its way. Obviously, the biggest news of the week was Fortnite is back with Season 2, Chapter 2, whatever it's called. I don't know. All I know is my nephew got back into it. Now he wants to play with me. And I'm like, oh, God, I don't know if I can download this to my PlayStation 4 again.
Do you know if he lost his shit when the black hole appeared? Because there's videos online, isn't there, of kids just like freaking the fuck out when that black hole showed up.
No, so several months ago, after Apex Legends launched, he deleted Fortnite because he's like, this is dumb. I don't want to play this anymore. Let's play Apex Legends. And I love Apex Legends. I think it's a great battle royale shooter. But as soon as this whole Chapter 2, Story 2, Page 2, whatever it is, started coming up, he reinstalled it. So unfortunately, no, I don't have any videos of him going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, about this. I certainly have videos of him doing that with other things. That was weird. I don't know why I said that.
Every time you do an impression of someone losing it, it's always the exact same voice. It's always that mother brain from Captain N voice.
I have one impression, and that's it. There is a story I would like to talk about this week, and that is having to do with Okami. In a video posted to Twitter this week, Platinum Games' Hideki Kamiya appeared alongside developer Ikumi Nakamura, announcing that Okami is going to be back. In the Twitter post, Ikumi says she wants to make a sequel to the legendary PlayStation 2 game, also saying, quote, "We want to see Kamiya's Okami again, right everyone?" Okami was developed by the short-lived but brilliant production team Clover Studio over at Capcom, who hold the rights to Okami. The game also got a Cute as Balls prequel on the DS called Okami Den. I am all for a sequel to Okami for two reasons. One, there are not nearly enough Zelda-likes on the market. And two, that game was beautiful on the PlayStation 2. Just imagine what they could do with that art direction on like the PlayStation 5. And we don't even know what that's going to look like yet. Like, it is just, I am just like watering at the mouth thinking about how fucking beautiful this game could be on better hardware.
And I know I beat the drum of art books maybe a little too much, but after I beat Okami, I went and ordered the art book from Japan and paid like $80, including shipping, to get it here. And it's still one of my most cherished art books to this day. It is so fucking gorgeous. Yeah, I mean, like the idea of that being on next gen consoles, I can't imagine it, but it's something I want in my eyes and in my heart and in my life.
Absolutely, yeah, no. Sad thing is I've never actually beat the original Okami, and I've owned 3 versions of it. I have the original PlayStation 2 version, the Wii version, and now I own the PlayStation 4 Okami HD re-release, and I'm just like, maybe I should actually get around to seeing everything this game has to offer, because I routinely see people say that it is better than most Zelda games ever created.
I'll put it to you this way. I can't speak a lot to the Zelda games. I don't really care for Zelda all that much. I certainly, growing up around the time of Zelda, I can appreciate it for what it is, but never really took to them. But it is maybe, other than the Darksiders games, which, you know, my history with that doesn't really count. It's the only like Zelda-like I've beaten myself, like from beginning to end, and was just enthralled the entire way through.
So I'm clearly missing something by not going through all the way through it.
It's worth your time. Put it to you that way.
Have you played it, Charlotte?
I can't, because my ex stole my Wii disc of it. Well, he didn't steal it, but I gave it to him, and then he never played it, and I never asked for it back, and then we broke up.
Damn.
So.
You get to take that one to court. Take that one to small claims court, I think.
I gave
Judge
him back
Judy.
Final Fantasy 15, damn it. Why didn't he give me back Okami?
Should we go and get it back for you? Should we all just go down? We'll all just get together and
Put on our Spliffy
Wait.
jackets and go rough them up.
put on us. Yeah. Where does he live? What in England? Is it? Well, I'm just trying to figure out what country it is.
No comment.
Guys,
If it's in England, then it's like it's just going to be me on my own. I'm going to get the shit kicked out of me. So.
we've just written Ocean's 14.
Back to Julia Robert.
Like on a really small scale, but still Ocean's 14.
Nah, he just I think he just forgot he had it. I don't want to badmouth the guy. He's a perfectly nice guy. But with this whole Okami thing, I feel like you shouldn't get too excited about the prospect, because it's Nakamura, right?
Yes.
She's traveling around a lot lately, just going to different companies, and this is after she left her old studio. So I think she's just sort of trying to figure out her next move, and anything she says until it's a firm announcement, it's more she's probably just traveling around and trying to work out what her next steps are. So, but she seems to have a pretty good rapport with, I mean, it's her old company, right? So it wouldn't be too far of a leap to think that it might actually happen.
Well, we'll see. I mean, if you know, maybe they're testing the waters, drawing up interest, seeing if maybe whoever the corporate fat cats or the big wigs who look at this kind of shit go, oh, there's all this hubbub for a new Okami. What a better way for us to showcase our company on PlayStation 5 and Xbox 720 or whatever the fuck it's going to be called, Xbox 3. Than Okami 2. I think that would be fucking incredible launch game or year after launch game for a next gen console. But hope springs eternal in my heart.
Plus, Capcom has said that it is looking to pillage and plunder its old IPs for remakes and sequels going forward based on the success of, Monster Hunter World and Resident Evil 2. So
Dino Crisis. When will they give us Dino Crisis? Oh my god.
Never.
Why do people like Dino Crisis? So it's just dinosaurs.
It's Resident Evil with dinosaurs.
Exactly.
I'm getting deja vu, I swear.
You're gonna get the indie spiritual successor, and you're gonna like it.
God, that's like winning like most handsomest lady at the boarding school. It's not it's not a real prize.
You are listening to Podtoid.
All right, we are just about out of time, but before we go, Occams, do we have a community shout out this week?
We do. We have one of our own has moved on to bigger and better things. So I want to give a shout out to King Siggy himself, Peter Glagowski.
Yeah.
He's taking absolutely. Yes, clapping. I'm holding a microphone, or I'd clap to hear it. I'll do this. Can y'all hear that?
Oh, it sounds like the big spiders in Resident Evil.
That's all I'm going to think about now. It's so true.
That honestly sounded like the opening notes to Sarah Silverman's "I'm fucking Matt Damon" right there.
Getting back to the community shout out. Just shout out to Peter. He was a good dude on the site for a very long time. He put a lot of good content. He will be missed, but we're so happy for him and wish him nothing but the best going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope he enjoys life as a editor, because it's something he really hasn't had to do here on Destructoid, and boy, it really is a lot different than just writing for a site, gotta say.
Yes. Good luck, Peter. I hope everything goes great for you.
Yeah, good luck.
Absolutely. All right, that is it. On behalf of Chris, Charlotte, Occams, and myself, I want to thank you all for listening to Podtoid, and don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, and the Destructoid YouTube channel, and be sure to stick around for a all-new episode of Spoilsport. Are they gone?
I think so.
Okay, it's time for Spoilsport. Yep, still hate that intro music. All right, everyone, welcome to Spoilsport. It is the show within a show where we discuss the latest and greatest in film. I am here with Chris. Chris, thank you for joining me.
That's no problem. I watched Jared Leto's performance, and I'm ready to go.
No, sorry, that is the wrong Joker.
All right, well, let's just go anyone. I'll just wing it.
Okay. That's right. We are here talking about Joker, the new, I guess it's technically a superhero film, even though it's really not a superhero film. But we actually have a clip of it right here.
Did you hear what the maid said when the Duchess asked if she'd given the goldfish fresh water that morning? No, Your Highness, he hasn't yet used what he had yesterday.
I'm sorry, that is the wrong clip, but just...
that Leto.
Here is an actual clip from the trailer, because finding other clips that are not in trailers is apparently hard to do when you're not in the biz.
And finally, in a world where everyone thinks they can do my job, check out this guy.
When I was a little boy and told people I was going to be a comedian, everyone laughed at me. Well, no one's laughing now.
You can say that again, pal.
That is the great Robert De Niro as Murray Franklin, the host of a late-night talk show in Gotham City, with Joaquin Phoenix as Arthur Fleck, a.k.a. the man who would become Joker, in Todd Phillips' Joker. The movie also stars Frances Conroy, who you probably know from American Horror Story, as Penny Fleck, his mother, Zazie Beetz as Sophie Dumond, and Brent Cullen as Thomas Wayne. The movie is written and directed by Todd Phillips, who did the Hangover films. It won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival this year and has so far grossed $737 million worldwide. Wow. Yeah, it actually has a shot of making it to $1 billion, which is insane. I mean, it's not insane for superhero films, but this really isn't a superhero film. It's really exceptional when you consider that this movie is rated R, and I don't think there has been a rated R film to make $1 billion. So, it may get there, it may not. Either way, I don't think anyone expected this type of reception for this film. I mean, it's even outgrossed Logan, which was, the first, I think the first big rated R superhero film. I can't remember if Deadpool came before it or not.
Right.
But they're both great. And so this one, it's also part of what Warner Brothers and DC are hoping to do with kind of one-off films that are going to be darker in tone, more adult-oriented, and you really can't go wrong with a character like the Joker because it's such an iconic character in not only film but in comic books and in cartoon series and everywhere. I mean, the Joker remains one of the best supervillains of all time.
Yes, I agree. I think it very much goes like you can Justice League all you want, but I think it very much goes kind of name the DC characters. I think it very much goes Batman, Joker, and then like whoever.
Yeah,
do you know what
absolutely.
I mean? The statement has always been for a long time that Marvel had the heroes, but DC had the villains. Do you know what I mean? People have been saying that for ages, and I think that holds very true. The Batman universe, when you think of bad guys from comic books, it's the Batman universe is just all the 5-star top liners, isn't it?
Absolutely. His rogues gallery is far superior to that of any other superhero. I think the only one of Marvel that would come close would probably be Spider-Man.
Right.
So Joker is at least partially inspired by the Man Who Laughed, which was a graphic novel or comic book from the 80s that redid the Joker's origin story. Instead of having a wife and a soon-to-be born child to support, this Arthur Fleck has to support himself and his mentally unstable mother in a 70s Gotham. Arthur Fleck works as a hire-a-clown by day, and at night he dreams of being a stand-up comedian who will appear on Murray Franklin's talk show, who is, like I said, played by Robert De Niro. Unfortunately for Fleck, he's just not that funny and has a disorder that causes him to laugh maniacally during stressful situations. After losing his job as a hire-a-clown, Fleck finds meaning when he kills 3 men on a train and sets into motion his ascent to become the Joker. I guess we should start. How should we start this? Because this is, we talked off air. This is a kind of a weird film to talk about, especially compared to everything else we've done. We've done the straightforward superhero films, and then Godzilla, and I can't remember what I did with Dan.
Detective Pikachu.
That's right. That was the Dan one. And so this is in a league of its own. This is unlike anything we've done before. Now we've been talking about doing this for a few weeks. It's taken us both a while to see the film, and in the past, when we've done Spoilsport, we've generally seen eye to eye on what we think about the films that we've done. I think the only time I disagree with someone was when I did Godzilla with Occam's and how much I hated that film. But after seeing this one, I was thinking, are we going to see eye to eye on it? Are we going to be on the same page? And so, I've been champing at the bit to know what are your thoughts on the film. So I got to know right off the bat, what do you think of Joker?
I think Joker is a beautiful mess that features an incredibly strong lead performance, really good visual aesthetic, and some smart ideas for what to do with a character. But I think it falls down repeatedly and is severely hampered by Phillips' writing.
Okay, so I just want to say right now, because we are on the same fucking page about this movie.
Of course we are. That's why we're best friends.
Thank God. We are best friends who always see eye to eye.
For listeners at home, we genuinely don't tell each other before recording what we think of the film. We don't even drop hints at it.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes the conversation more interesting that way. And no, I've been really stressing out about this. Are we just going to be on totally opposite ends of this movie? Because you have people like IGN and Empire and all of these review sites that are like, oh, it's the greatest movie of the year. Oh, give it the Oscar now. It's 100 out of 100. It's 5 out of 5. It's perfect in every way. And then you just have all of these other people who are like, oh no, this sucks. Oh, this is the worst. And I'm just like, I hope we don't have a gulf that far between us on what we think about this movie. So it's nice to know that I mean, literally everything you just said right now is exactly what I'm thinking. And so I guess let's start with.
So should we just wrap? Should we wrap it up? Yeah, go home. Are we done? Yeah. But we're in agreement. I've made the review. We can end it right here.
That's okay. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning into Spoilsport. You have a good night now. Just kidding. We're gonna keep going. Let's go ahead and start with the good. And you brought up Joaquin Phoenix's performance, and goddamn, he is so good in this film, in spite of the source material he is given.
Right. I've been a fan of Joaquin Phoenix. The first film I really remember seeing him in was 8mm, which was the Nicolas Cage snuff movie film, and he was like the porn store owner who kind of teams up with him, and it doesn't work out so well. And then he kind of dropped off the map a little bit, but he really came back with a lot of these later movies like Walk the Line, etc. Gladiator was kind of the film that really blew him up, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it was almost a case of something I thought from trailer 1 of Joker was, I don't know what this film's going to be like, but I'm not going to walk out of it and go, well, Joaquin Phoenix was shit, and that is exactly how it worked out. I have flaws with the film, and we'll talk about them, but none of them generally are based around his portrayal of Arthur Fleck. Maybe there are moments where I feel Arthur Fleck falls down. There are several moments where I feel he falls down, but they're never because I don't believe what Phoenix is doing. They're because of what he has to do because the script says so.
Yeah. And also, I just want to say, before we just continue on with Joaquin Phoenix. By the way, I love that you pronounce it Joaquin, because he is kind of wacky. But Frances Conroy as his mom, I think, did an exceptional job in this as well. She obviously isn't the focus of the film. It's all he's carrying this thing as far as he can carry it. Yeah. There you go. It's an absolute character study of him, of Joker, of Arthur Fleck, and I think a lot of people make a big deal out of when actors lose a lot of weight to play a character or put on a lot of weight to play a character. You have someone like Christian Bale who goes to the extreme with The Machinist, right. But I think with it for me, for this version of Joker, it really worked so well for him to lose all that weight because, he's not only a sick person in the mind that Joaquin Phoenix gets across, but he's sick in the body as well. And I think, when you do that extreme weight loss like he did for this film, I don't want to say it adds dedication because I don't think that's fair to actors who don't go through that, but it generally helps the performance because it allows his body to speak in ways when his mouth isn't moving.
At no point during the film do I see what Joaquin's doing in this movie and feel like he's turned up for work as an actor. I always feel like he's giving as 5 stars as he can to everything he does. It never feels like he's collecting the check. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't in any of his films. I don't want to fucking gush over this guy, but I think he's fantastic. We'll probably talk about a couple of his other films, or they'll get referenced at least. But you were never really here last year. I watched that film twice in the space of 24 hours. Do you know what I mean? And he's just utterly magnetic. He's got a physical presence. He could be quite frightening. He can be incredibly vulnerable and super sympathetic. And to say he's basically got to play a character who's essentially going to become an amoral psychopath, he does a good job at making sure all these masks that Fleck has to wear are well balanced, and it takes a special actor to do that.
Absolutely. There are so many moments in this movie where he is just allowed to act. There may be a direction, hey, do this, but then you can see Joaquin's talent just pouring through. And I want to talk on a moment. My favorite moment in this entire film is after he shoots the 3 Wall Street guys when he's dancing in the bathroom. It references all of the 1940s musicals that he watches with his mother, and he's just Occam said it was like he was doing yoga or Tai Chi in the bathroom, and it's just like that to me is the most beautiful moment of Joaquin's portrayal of this character, of studying who he is, and just, you know, you have this really graphic violence of him gunning down these people on a train and at a train station, and then he's just like soaking up the feelings of how good that made him feel, and to do it with just like this soft and elegant dance, I absolutely love. I think that is a great way, perhaps the best way to show how mentally unstable Arthur Fleck is, and I don't know if another actor could have pulled it off as good as Joaquin did.
Right, and what with the dancing he does in this film, you talked earlier about kind of the insane weight loss. That just kind of gives everything this almost spindly, almost like German expressionism. It kind of gives the way he moves this almost spindly, spider-like quality. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which
and he has that throughout the entire film. German expressionism is a great way to reference it, because that is exactly what it is. You think of those, you know, old silent 1910 films where all the characters are kind of hunched over and they're all frail and tiny. I mean, that is what he is throughout this entire film. Right until the end, till he, you know, finds his backbone, I guess.
The part of the performance that I particularly stuck with, and I should just reiterate for those who haven't listened to Spoilsport and don't know, we are going to fully spoil the movie, so you will hear everything about what happens to characters and the conclusion and all that. So if you thought we weren't going to do that, this is your warning. But his performance is when he does his uncontrollable laughter. There are moments like when he does it in the opening scene with his mental health worker, and when he has his gig at the club, that I felt my throat closing up watching it. Like I could feel the choking, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And also this is kind of diving in pretty deep pretty early, but yeah, I have mental health problems. That's something I have no problem with kind of admitting. And I kind of had a bit of a breakdown a couple of weeks ago over reasons that aren't worth going into. Watching that opening at the table where we come out from the credits and he's just laughing at the table and his legs are going, he can't keep his legs still. There's like a horrible relatability there that to his the utter misery of his inability to keep control of himself, which he is so desperately trying to do. And it's so painful. And it hurts so much whenever he does that I can't stop laughing thing, because you can see Fleck breaking himself to try and stop himself from doing that. And the only reason I reference myself is when I had a bit of a... I basically broke down in tears not too long ago, and I couldn't believe how feral my kind of little breakdown was on that day. It was very uncontrollable and very heavy and very loud, and it lacked kind of rhythm, if you know what I mean. The breathing, my breathing lacked rhythm, and watching that so close to this happening to me, I couldn't believe how much I was able to relate to his situation. And that's not to shine the spotlight on me, it's just me showing how accurate I feel he portrayed Fleck's particular issue, a physical issue, which is quite surprising, because it is the kind of thing that in the hands of a lesser actor, not only could you not sell, but people might actually find funny.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, like, in the hands of a lesser actor, people could misinterpret it as something that's supposed to be funny, but it's not. It's incredibly fucking sad when he does that.
Honestly, I think Joaquin pulls a little bit of his own mental illness into this picture, which is why he is so perfect for this variation of Joker, because, you know, we've never had a Joker like this before, that the one that you actually explored the character. They've always been, you know, either Cesar Romero, who was there for the yucks, Jack Nicholson, who was just Jack Nicholson in makeup for that role. You know, Heath Ledger went a very different direction with it for his role in The Dark Knight. And not saying that this one, it may be better than that one, but it's a different enough take that I can admire them both equally, even if I admire one film more than the other.
Well, it's an odd way to put it, but I kind of see it a bit like you look at the James Bonds, where you know they're the same character, but you can see the positives and the flaws in every interpretation that kind of fill in the gaps for the other interpretations.
Yeah, okay, that's a really good way of putting it. So I guess we've talked enough about his performance. He is amazing in this. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins the Oscar, but there are still a few months to go, and who knows what's going to come next. So let's get down to the actual movie itself. Todd Phillips, who I said earlier did the Hangover films, this is an idea that he got a few years ago, that this is something he wanted to do. Very recently, he said, you can't do comedies anymore because of Me Too. I just want to make it clear that my opinion on this has nothing to do with him saying that. I don't care that he said that. Mark Maron, who is also in the film, pretty much put him in his place right away. But I don't know if he was the right person to make this movie, because I don't think he has the vision to properly portray the type of mental illness that Arthur Fleck has, that Joaquin Phoenix is able to bring out of the performance. I don't think he is talented enough of a director or a writer to pull that off. And I just want to bring this particular moment. I don't know if this was scripted. I don't know if this was improv, but to me, this felt like the silliest moment in the movie. Is about halfway through, Arthur Fleck, I can't remember what happens, but he's in a downer mood, and he takes everything out of the refrigerator and crawls into it.
And climbs inside it. And
that to me felt out of place to the rest of the portrayal as him as having a lot of mental problems, because it just seemed like something that somebody who doesn't have mental problems would write into a script to have someone do. Oh, that sounds crazy enough. Let's have him take everything out of the fridge and get inside of it.
There's a phrase I kind of coined that I use amongst my friends that I call BBC Mad. Okay. And what BBC Mad is for quite a while on shows like EastEnders, whenever they tried to portray mental illness, it was always like a character hugging their knees, rocking back and forth and shouting, "Don't look at me," or something. Do you know what I mean? It was always this is what mentally ill people are like. And no matter who the character was or what gender or what age they were or anything like that, it was always that. And I hate to say it, but it was always that, screwy finger to the head, like flapping the lips. It was always that kind of a performance. So I always kind of classed it as BBC Mad whenever I'd watch a film. And some of the moments in Joker are a little BBC Mad, which really kind of clashes with the moments that are like Phoenix on his own in a stairwell, like breaking down.
So I do think that Phillips starts out early in the film in the right direction. One of the first things that happens is Fleck goes home. Well, first he gets assaulted by kids, but you've seen that in the trailer. And then he goes home to his mom, and then they tune in to watch Robert De Niro's show, and he has this vision of him being in the audience there, getting invited up. Everyone loves him because he loves his mother, and that to him is something that could happen. And I love that early moment in the movie, and I wish Todd Phillips would have went to explore that relationship, or at least that imaginary relationship, more for Arthur Fleck than the other relationships that he has in this movie. Because, if you're going to take from The King of Comedy, just take it whole hog. Just have it be, this relationship between, this imaginary relationship between Joaquin Phoenix and Robert De Niro. Because I think that opening really set a great tone for the film that the rest of it was not able to equal.
I do remember seeing that, and there were a couple of moments at the beginning that I remember thinking that I was pleased we were on kind of a different kind of trajectory. That was one of them. Another one was just the use of like 1930s Hollywood font for the credits.
Yes.
And it opens with Fleck dancing in the street. We're next to a guy playing like piano, you know what I mean, like in the old Charlie Chaplin movies or whatever. And that was kind of these are elements that make you realize off the bat that we're going down a different path, and that's pretty good. But you mentioned Phillips at the top of the hour here. You mentioned Phillips as the director or writer. The irony is one of the things that's good, which we will probably talk about at some point, is that I think behind the lens he does a pretty good job. I know it's more kind of the cinematographer's role, but I think as a director of what we're looking at, although again, like I say, cinematographer helps with that, it's fine. there's kind of some pacing and some scene order issues that I'm kind of not so sure about. But I think what Phillips brings that damages the film is definitely the writing, some of the script, some of what happens, and some of how it goes down. I almost feel like he might have been okay if he was just the director and somebody else wrote it with the same kind of idea for the story and the same character and the same beats, but just not written by him.
Speaking of beats, let's get into one of the elements that I thought was unnecessary for this film, and that is the character Zazie Beetz plays. She is his neighbor. She meets him in a stairwell where she's with her daughter, and she kind of puts a finger gun to her head and fake blows her brains out, and then he goes down the hall and does it. And then they get involved in a relationship. And so she goes to see him perform stand-up. Apparently they have sex really quickly, like into their relationship.
She also validates his crimes, doesn't she? Because he's looking at the murder he's committed on the newspaper, and she's like, "Oh, I'm glad that happened to them. That guy's a hero."
Yes, and then when he follows her around town or around Gotham, she comes to him and says, "I wish you would have come in there and robbed the place or shot the place up." I can't remember which one she says, but as I didn't find this to be a surprise whatsoever. Obviously, this whole relationship was in his head. It did not add anything to the film to me. I get they wanted to have maybe another character or maybe a way to show that he is crazy, but I thought him imagining himself with Robert De Niro at the beginning of the film was a much better way of showing that he wasn't all quite existing in the real world with everyone else.
Well, here's a take I have on the relationship with Zazie Beetz' character Sophie that bothered me. I do like Zazie Beetz, by the way. I'm really into her, and I was happy to see her in the film. Yeah. But the problem with Arthur and Sophie in this movie is when things happen, like he follows her and she comes to his door and says, "Oh, I'm essentially says, I'm glad you followed me." Then when he goes and just kind of barges in covered in blood and makeup, or not blood, but covered in his rained on makeup, and they basically, it's implied that they fuck and other things like that. Those sequences seem wrong and don't seem right. And we know as the film goes on, it's because they're not taking place. But the problem is if you don't figure that out, if you haven't predicted that, all it looks like for a good hour and 40 minutes is that Sophie is just a rubbish character. Yeah. The fact that that their sex doesn't make any sense. Her being totally cool with him following her around doesn't make any sense. When she says that guy's a hero, about that kind of feels off. And although some would argue that these are clues to the fact that the relationship isn't real, I feel what it basically does to those who haven't clocked that is you're just like, she wouldn't say that. She wouldn't do that. Why would she think that was sexy? Why would she think it's cool that he's stalking her? So if you haven't cottoned on to that idea, you basically spend the film going, what the fuck is wrong with this character? And it almost feels like Phillips doesn't mind writing a terrible character so he can go, aha.
And then really, if you have already figured it out, I figured it out way early into this. As soon as she came to his door after he stalked her, like, okay, so this is all in his head.
That soon, wow.
Yeah, and then you're just waiting. Like, you're just waiting for the reveal that all of this relationship is not real and it's all in his head. And so, like you said, if you don't know it's coming, then it's, like you said, it's a rubbish character. But if you do see it coming, you're like, okay, I need to get this over with because it's not adding anything to this film. I already know he's crazy. I don't need fake relationship to convince me of that.
And you almost feel that like you keep saying, the relationship between him and Murray would have been a far more interesting path to take the meat from.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the way they portray Arthur Fleck at the beginning of him living with his mother, sitting down watching television with her every night, and kind of being in this fantasy world. This is, you already gave your little darkness. I'm going to give my darkness. That is relatable to me, of someone who for a while wasn't all there, who kind of just dove into these fantasies that I used to have and would just live in them when times were tough and I didn't want to deal with what was going on. And so that to me was just, it was the realest that this movie ever is that opening 10, 20 minutes, however much it is, of just him at work. His life is shit. He goes home to his mother, and then they find a little bit of joy watching, late night television and these old movies. And that opening sequence, to me, especially when he has the fantasy, it absolutely does make Murray out to be his hero. And when his hero lets him down later in the film, it is a big turning point for Arthur Fleck. I just wish that all the time they spent building up his imaginary relationship with Zazie Beetz could have been building up his hero much more. Instead of having him stalk Sophie, maybe have him follow around Murray. That to me is the better relationship, is the key relationship in this film that ultimately makes him turn into Joker. And I don't feel the director, the writer, Todd Phillips, spent enough time building that up as he should have, because he had other things on his mind. Anyways, let me ask you a question, Chris.
Sure.
Every time, this is something that happened to me, and I want to know if it happened to you as well. I would be into the film, I'd be really getting into it, and then somebody would say Gotham or Arkham, and I would just be pulled right out of it. Like, oh, shit, this is a comic book movie. Did that ever happen to you?
Right. Not so much until we started to head towards the end of the movie.
Okay.
Even when people were referring to Gotham and referring to, I fucking love that right towards the beginning of the film, they're like, there's super rats in Gotham, and then it's never mentioned again. like on TV, they're like, a new breed of super rat is taking over Gotham. And I was like, is super rats going to be a plot device here? But it isn't. But it didn't throw me when people talked about Gotham, or even really when people talked about Wayne or anything like that. But I started to struggle when we started to go into Thomas Wayne might be his dad.
Okay.
And then he goes to meet Bruce, and then here comes Alfred. And it didn't ruin the movie at all, but it is the point where you're kind of thrust into the coldness of, this is a Batman, not a Batman movie, but this is a DC Comics book movie. But I won't lie, it honestly didn't throw me, any of that Gotham stuff, apart from one bit, which I think universally is probably one of the worst bits in the entire movie.
Yeah, and I think I know which one you're talking about, and we'll get to that, because I want to talk about I want to talk about something you just brought up. Thomas Wayne. Right. This is the moment that I think the movie went from being, oh, this can be great, to, oh, this is not going to be as good as I thought it was. So one of the plot elements, for those who haven't seen it and for some reason listening to Spoilsport, is that, as you said, there is a B plot line about Thomas Wayne potentially being Arthur Fleck's real dad. And boy, just like Zazie Beetz, was this not necessary, because it takes away from the Joker's creation and puts it more on the Waynes. And if there's anything that this film did not need, it's the existence of Thomas Wayne, of Alfred, of Bruce Wayne, of any of them. Like, it absolutely, from beginning to end, we could hear about them in the background, because obviously Thomas Wayne would still be alive at this point, but god damn, did they not need to be crucial elements to the plot.
Well, the thing with me and the Thomas Wayne plotline, which I'm not quite as down on as you are there, but because I did like Thomas Wayne in the film, I thought Cullen did a good performance, but I'm not saying you didn't say that, but my problem is, it starts this thing that the film does, which is like a checklist of quests to go wrong for Fleck to beat him down.
Yeah.
So the film, and this is kind of one of my umbrella thoughts of the movie, the film basically starts and it goes, he loves his job, he fancies this girl, he's got this overly familiar connection with his mum, and he might know who his dad is. And then the film, like clockwork, just checks each of these things off to go wrong for him. It's like it sets up this queue of things to happen that are going to send him further down this spiral, to the point that, and I mean this, and this isn't me like, "Ugh," but I was predicting what the next scene would be during scenes. So he goes to see Thomas, right? And he sees him at the cinema. He, out of nowhere, they do that thing where he puts on a bellboy suit like he's fucking 47 and just goes in through a side door. So now we're like, even there, we're in a different realm of filmmaking, because we're now in a filmmaking where he's like putting on disguises and sneaking into buildings, which isn't the same film as when he's in that cluttered office being told he can't get his medication. Yeah. Now we're in a different kind of movie making.
For how quickly he gets past those security guards at the front when there's all those other Jokers,
and there's just another door, and there's nobody at that door, is there? On either side. There's a whole army of people who can't. There's a whole army of people who can't get in. It's like, she's the other door, mate. There's another door over there. So he goes to see Thomas, and while Thomas is bopping him on the nose, I say he's going to go home and there's ambulances outside his house. And the next shot, flashing lights. And that happened repeatedly throughout the film. I kind of got the trajectory of all the events in order, which I think is testament to how kind of normal the film actually is.
Yeah.
In terms of standard movie making and standard storytelling.
And it's sad, because if there's one element of the Joker, especially after he became, the villain that we know him as today, that defines him, is his unpredictability. And this is an entirely predictable film. I wasn't necessarily calling out plot elements as they happen like you were, but there was no point of this movie where I was surprised by anything that happens. Because it all, like you said, it's just a checklist of stuff to go wrong for him to drive him insane.
It's the equivalent of the old I'm 4 days away from retirement or
yes.
And I think when we talk about how the plot threads of Joker as a movie are formulaic, I think we get to what, for me personally, and I don't know whether you agree with this, is kind of the crux of what's wrong with the film overall. And that, to me, is that Phillips wants to explore things without committing to exploring anything. He wants to talk about civil unrest. He wants to talk about eat the rich. He wants to talk about mental health, child abuse, the failing state, and loneliness, but doesn't really go any further on any of those other than just saying they exist.
No, you're absolutely right. Everything in this movie is, with the exception of Joaquin's performance, is skin deep.
And that's the hardest thing in terms of everything we've talked about so far on this episode. That's the hardest thing to bring up, because there are people who will watch this film. There are a lot of people who like this movie. And as I always say about games or anything, if you love it, I'm glad you love it. I don't want people to not like things. I want people to like things. So it's really hard to kind of say the film's superficial. But Phoenix's performance is great. And although we didn't go into depth of it, I've already explained that I think it's visually a really good film in terms of its use of light and color and photography. That stuff's like, you can almost hit pause on majority of scenes and then just print that thing out and make it a poster. Do you know what I mean? It's so visual. But I kind of feel that behind those two elements, the film is Phillips trying to make a smart, deep movie without putting any depth into it. He says of civil unrest, millionaires don't like the poor and the poor want to fight back, and that's it. And that's kind of his approach to all of the heaviest topics of his film.
Yeah, and that is kind of the saddest thing about this movie, is that this is a film that has generated so much discussion but doesn't actually say all that much. Which I think, again, going back to him as the writer, is the sign of a bad screenplay. Because if he's only presenting stuff at face value, if he's only giving people opinions that could be summed up in 140 characters or less. It's not doing its part to explore these themes that he so desperately wants us to think he explored. And maybe some people will walk away from this film going, "Oh my God, yeah, that was deep," but I'm just not seeing it as deep. And I agree with you there.
When Arthur gets his moment and he turns up on Murray's show, he delivers this monologue that's almost like, I don't want to say, but it's almost like a manifesto, right? He delivers this monologue.
And I think that was the intention of it. Like, this is supposed to be like a manifesto.
Yeah.
Because you remember, originally, when he was going onto the show, the original plan, even though I never thought this was going to be the plan because again,
me
too, super predictable, was that he was going to kill himself. So he's going to deliver this manifesto and then boom.
But when he delivers it, I almost feel that Arthur's journey doesn't result in that dialogue. I feel like Arthur's journey has been too much of him and himself and alone, whereas what he's saying does sound specifically like it's written as a call to arms. But Arthur has not struck me at any point in the movie as anyone who's trying to make life better for anybody but just himself. And I understand that he wants to do that. So the language used in that scene, which is almost like he might as well be on a pedestal saying to the world, "Rise up," is just like, I don't know why Arthur gives a shit about rising up. And it's the one scene in the film where I almost feel like, and this isn't so much a knock on Phoenix's performance, although I do think it's one of the Joker's worst moments in the movie. That film feels like it is the only bits where it feels like he was handed words and just told to say these words because this is what I think the message of the movie is. Look at the camera and tell the audience what the message of the movie is. And when he's doing that monologue, I'm like, ow. I'm just like, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying what he's saying.
And I think that Phillips tried to tie in the Joker's fall to madness in with society's fall around him. But I mean, outside of Super Rats and a few mentions of, the Joker saying, "Hey, it's getting pretty crazy out there," there's really not a lot to back that up. This movie is if anything is about Arthur Fleck's personal journey to the dark side. Oh God, I can't believe I just said dark side.
I hear you.
And you're right, that doesn't match up. What he says, his spiel, his manifesto right before he blows Robert De Niro's brains out.
When you said earlier about how you feel you would have more been interested in the relationship between him and Murray over him and, say, Sophie, I'd have been more interested in the film just being focused on Joker's descent into madness as opposed to Joker's descent into madness that also brings about the revolution.
Yes. And that is, I mean, I've seen this a lot from people that they say that the last, after he kills Murray is when the movie feels like it takes a left turn into a different film. And I agree with them. In the lead to this film, there's been a lot of talk about, if it's glorifying violence and stuff like that. And the filmmakers came out and said that they don't see the Joker as a hero, and they criticize people who criticize the film without having seen it. Having seen the movie, I'm wondering if the filmmakers had seen their own film, because the Joker is clearly presented as a hero here. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, because this entire film, because of Joaquin Phoenix's performance, you're kind of sympathizing with him. And so when he pulls off this actions and when he gives this dumb speech at the end, right before he kills Murray, they may want to distance from themselves saying that he's not a hero, but goddamn, it really does feel like he's a hero in this film.
And what you're saying here leads me to this thing that I think is vital in the reviewing of the events of this movie. I think it's so important.
Okay.
Over the course of the film, we see Arthur commit several murders, learn about himself, learn about his horrible backstory, turn on the people he trusted, get quote unquote revenge, albeit slightly over the top revenge on people who got him fired or whatever. A shocking moment of violence. I'm from an era where films in the 90s were like 18 certificate and got cut, And now in Britain, what they can show in a 15 blows my mind. In a 15 certificate film blows. I'm not offended by it. It's just funny to think that we had, we couldn't show True Lies uncut in 1995, and now we've got this in a 15. Anyway.
Yeah.
But my point being is, and this is kind of, I think, easily the biggest problem with the film. Personally, I think this is the biggest problem with the film. Phillips doesn't want to condemn nor validate Joker. So what he does is he keeps the Joker walking a line, has him stray from the line, but then quickly has him return to it before you've decided whether you love him or you hate him. And he wants to have his cake and eat it. And this is no better presented unequivocally by the fact that everyone he kills, quote unquote, deserved it. They didn't deserve to die, but there's his mum, who he believes in the moment let him down and allowed the child abuse. Mm-hmm. There's the bankers on the train who were treating the woman like shit and beating him up. There's his friend who sold him the gun and got him fired. But pointedly, we don't see him commit the only murders in the film that would be murders of wholly innocent characters.
Yeah.
And Phillips does that on purpose, because if we see him kill Sophie and her child, we know the Joker's a villain.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there are 2 murders that may or may not take place, or 3 murders if you count Sophie, her child, and his doctor in the end credits, which we'll get to in the end sequence. Whenever Joker has to kill someone who you can't have any sympathy for him doing it for, not that any of his murders are sympathetic. He murders people for reasons like they got him fired. Obviously ridiculous, but you know what I'm saying. Phillips keeps it off screen because he's too scared to condemn the Joker as a villain. Yeah. So he never shows you Joker killing someone who, quote unquote, didn't deserve it. And that in itself follows Phillips' line of, I want to have my cake and eat it. I want the fans of the Joker to not turn against him because of the movie. I don't want to get into any shit for glorifying violence. I want him to be psychotic and maybe kill innocent people, but I also don't want to show him killing those innocent people because that's going to turn you off too much.
No, I 100% agree with that.
There is no way a coincidence that the only murders Arthur commits against innocent people aren't shown. There's no way that's a coincidence. And I don't think it's because it's in his mind, or I think it's straight up. Phillips is like, if we show him killing those people, everyone's going to hate the Joker, and I don't want people to hate the Joker. To me personally, that's the biggest problem with the film, that at no point does the film pointedly go, this guy's a psychopath now. The world has ruined him and he will now kill you as soon as look at you. It always wants you to be like, oh, that Joker.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, it wants you to agree with his reasoning for killing those people. With his mother, which I imagine was the hardest one for him to do, as a character. It has to really build up all of this backstory that is delivered within 5 minutes in order to make that death sympathetic to the audience, of that it's something he could pull off without them hating it. Because a guy killing his old mother is bad, but we're gonna throw in a whole bunch of a really quick backstory about how she let him be abused for years by his father, and that's why he has the laughing disorder, because of the head trauma.
Like, to kind of drill home the misstep there, we have it revealed that he was abused as a child, and you know where this is probably going. 10 minutes later, dancing to the music of a convicted paedophile.
Boy, that was an odd music choice for that stairway dance.
Which is a good sequence. It's like a good sequence, but
it really is.
Like,
and actually, speaking on that stairwell dance, aside from the fact that to me the music didn't fit it whatsoever, and maybe I was just so used to seeing the Smile song and all the trailers over that.
Right.
You talk about how this film can be visually arresting. Gotham, for most of it, is portrayed as kind of a dirty and dingy city. It's gray. There's garbage fucking everywhere. But then you get to this stairwell scene, and you have the sun setting behind him, the golden hour, I think it's called, and he's all in color. That is so beautiful. And then, but the problem is that when you have this film that the rest of it is gray and dark and gross, and then you kind of have this clean, colorful moment, it really does look like the filmmakers are painting him as kind of a savior for this city. So if they don't consider him to be a hero, that scene really does paint him as the hero, because he is now going to spread his color throughout this city.
And then after the steps, he makes his way to the show. Somehow the cops aren't able to keep up with him. I guess they kind of give the idea that there's the crowds in the cities. So I don't know. Maybe they did. I suppose they don't know he's on the show. So it's. But he gets to the show and he has his monologue, which we've already talked about, and then we head into this sequence, which is basically the attempt to kind of almost make him the underworld figure that Joker is. And this is kind of what I was saying when I was going back to talking about the rebellion, where I don't think this is a film where at the end, like, that film doesn't end and I'm thinking now he's the king of the underworld, because that doesn't seem who Arthur is. Can you imagine him giving orders to people? Like, do you know what I mean?
Right.
He's not this. He's not the clown prince of crime. He's just this very kind of sad psychopath. And so when they kind of hoist him on their shoulders and he does his dance, I appreciate the visuals of his look. He's found his audience now. He never had an audience and now he has the audience. But I don't see Phoenix as Joker. I don't see Arthur Fleck as the kind of Joker that rallies a people. Ledger's Joker or Nicholson's Joker kind of do because of their weird charisma. But this Joker doesn't really have a charisma. He's just sociopathic.
And that is why a lot of people were taken out of the film in this last sequence, when Gotham is burning and everyone is running around in these masks. Like, was there like a sale on these things, or did they just start getting a lot of these in the city? How are there so many of these creepy fucking ass Joker masks all over the place?
And during that scene, we get
the worst part of this fucking movie.
Yeah.
And this is why I hated the Thomas Wayne inclusion at the beginning, because at the end, it's another goddamn Batman origin story, because we have to see his fucking parents killed again.
If I see that fucking pearl necklace one more time in a movie or a comic book or a video game, it's in Batman. It's in Batman Forever. I think it's in Batman Returns as well. It's in Batman Begins. It's in The Long Halloween. I think it's in The Dark Knight Returns, at least as a flashback. It's in Batman vs. Superman, I believe. I know that everybody wants a go at doing that scene, but when Thomas and Martha and young Bruce stepped out of that cinema, it was the only time in the film where I made a physical reaction in my seat of like, we're doing this. We're doing this. And I guess the only thing that made it salvageable, that it wasn't Joker himself that did it, because that would have been so, like, the way they tied it all together. The reason Joker's in this movie is to shoot Thomas Wayne. You know what I mean? Like,
this whole thing was a prequel to the 1989 Batman film. Who knew?
I think it's a fair comment, and I'm not speaking for anyone else here, but I think it's a fair comment that no matter whether you think Joker is a 1-star movie or a 5-star movie, you can remove that scene and it doesn't touch the film.
If anything, removing that scene would probably raise it from a 1-star to a 2-star film, because it is so massively unnecessary to anything that has happened in this movie. And because it is something we have seen so many times before, I can't imagine anyone watching that not immediately rolling their eyes.
It's used so often that I genuinely think it's just that everybody who has a go wants to do it. Like, everybody who has a go at making the video game, the comic, the movie. Everyone's just like, oh, well, this is my chance to do the scene. The problem here is, and this is the bit that's, I'm not going to lie to anyone, I'm always open, I'm always honest in everything I say and do. It's always how I truly feel. And that's not, I tell it like it is. I just don't ever want to bullshit people.
Okay.
Life's hard enough. There are probably people listening to this who are really upset with how down we're being on the film. And I need to reiterate, and I won't speak for CJ, but I'm sure he will himself. I need to reiterate that there is stuff to like in the Joker. There is stuff that is memorable, that is well done, that is beautifully shot, beautifully lit, effective violence, the train sequence, the use of like the cutting out light and stuff like that. I love that stuff. I love how violent the murder in the apartment is because it comes out of nowhere and it's horrifying. The scene on the steps, other than the choice of music, and on top of all of this, leading the fucking train, Joaquin Phoenix, giving it his all, being awesome as he always is, and portraying a version of the Joker that will stand in time alongside other versions of the Joker. But behind that is a very normal 3-star film that isn't as deep as it thinks it is.
I think there is a version of this that is stupendous, that deserves all of those best movie of the year, 10 out of 10, 5 stars, accolades
The Lion.
that it has received. Yes, the Golden Lion. But this isn't it. Joaquin Phoenix carries this movie like he is Atlas because it's all resting on his shoulders. And it's sad to see someone who is so talented having to deal with a script that is so misguided. We disagree on the Thomas Wayne, but I really did not like that because it was, to me, an unnecessary distraction from his descent into madness. Along with Zazie Beetz. I really wish it would have focused on a single relationship for him, or maybe two with his mother and then Robert De Niro's character Murray, rather than adding all of these superfluous dead ends to his character arc, rather than include them, because I think that is the much stronger version of this film. And real quick, I just want to throw this out. One of the conversations that has been happening around this movie is it dangerous? Is this a dangerous film? And after watching it, all I could think is, this movie wishes it was a dangerous film. It's really not. This movie wishes it was Man Bites Dog or a Serbian film. Those are dangerous films. This is not.
I agree. Like, I don't have much to add to that. I feel that Joker would be dangerous in the sense of a violent film has danger. So, like, take that as you feel danger applies to a movie. I think Joker is as dangerous as Scarface. I think Joker is as dangerous as RoboCop. No, maybe not RoboCop, because that's more of a comedy. But in terms of imitable violence, I think Heath Ledger's Joker is more iconic as someone people would kind of be like, yeah, I'm kind of like him. Whereas I think this Joker's very lonely and sad and kind of walled off. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm lonely and sad and kind of walled off. But I don't think there's like a cool factor to this Joker that, say, Heath Ledger's Joker carries. Yeah. So I ironically think anyone imitating the Joker would be more likely to imitate Ledger's Joker than they would Phoenix's.
Yeah, I think the Ledger Joker makeup is going to persist at protest rallies longer than, say,
forever.
The Joaquin Phoenix one does.
I have to make one more point because we haven't touched upon it, and I think it's important to make based on what I'm seeing around when people are talking about this film, and it's regarding the ending. The very ending.
Okay, the ending. So this is after he, after the Waynes get killed, after the riots. He's in a what we assume is Arkham Asylum.
Arkham. They fortunately do actually call it like Arkham Mental Institute, I think, don't they? I think they try and make it sound a little less gothic.
And
But
Arkham
he's-
is another, and seeing Arkham when he goes there earlier in the film to find his mother's file, that's another moment. It's like, oh, Arkham, comic book movie, take me out of it. Okay. But go on.
I also want to point out that when he does go to get the mother's file, the people in the corridors are acting BBC mad.
Yes, they are.
So his performance of mental health is something that's deep and clever and smart. But as soon as they bring in other characters with mental health problems, they're literally almost like sucking their thumb and holding a teddy bear.
Talking
Do you know what I mean?
themselves and
Yeah. Like embarrassing and offensive stereotypes.
Exactly.
So kind of shows how much Phoenix brings himself to that aspect of the film, whereas other people are told just talk to yourself and and flick your own head or whatever.
They all act like they're mental patients in that real Slim Shady music video. That is the depth of their acting. But we were talking about the final scene.
We get to the finale, right? And we've talked for a long time, and I don't want to upset anyone any more than I might have already done so. When the ending happens, I think that's a chronological ending that takes place in the real world, and he's in that institute, and that's that. Because I'm seeing people come up with so many different endings that involve what's in his head, whether the whole film was a story, whether he's died and he's actually gone to heaven and that's why the color palette's so dry, or whether that ending takes place years down the line and Batman's already out in the world. And no, I think it's he gets arrested and he goes to the hospital and there he is in the hospital. I think it's chronological and literal. And this isn't Inception. This isn't American Psycho. Do you know
this
what
is a
I mean?
Taxi Driver.
If this, or even the King of Comedy, which also has a something's not right about this ending.
Right.
I think this is literally just after the riot, he got arrested and got locked up. He kills his doctor, and this is where he lives now. In this, where he's now a fully fledged psychopath. But I'm seeing people who are like, and then he escapes at the end. What film were you watching? I'm seeing people who were like, that scene shows that the whole movie's been a story that never happened in his own head. If that was true, then why did he have fantasies within the story? Like, he was telling a story, but in the story he also went, and then I pretended to have a girlfriend. Like, there are so many Inception-style takes on that ending, and I think people are projecting there. I have no problem with people bringing what they want to a movie, but this isn't Bergman's Persona. This is he's arrested and now he's in Arkham Mental Hospital.
You know what that sounds like to me is people trying to give depth to a shallow film.
I'm not going to cast aspersions, but when I read these 4 alternate endings, I was just like, I don't know where you're getting those from. I think it's as black and white as that they quell the riot and he goes to Arkham.
Yeah.
And in Arkham, he's a dangerous figure who will kill you as much as look at you.
I mean, at this point, he has already learned that his murders have no consequences. Because he killed Murray on television, and then everyone loves him in the city. So obviously, when he kills the doctor, and you see the bloody footprints leading away before he's chased by the other
orderly.
Thank you. That's the word I couldn't think of earlier. This is him. He has now become the Joker that we all recognize the Joker to be, the guy who kills without care. And really at that point, because it is the last minute of the film, they can show the blood to show that he actually did kill them. Versus,
because the credits are going to roll. Yeah.
Versus with Zazie and her daughter, I don't think they show blood on him at all. It's just supposed to be implied that he did. If you've gotten to this point of the film, you're already on board with him being a killer and enjoying it. So
it's almost like even if you decided, oh, he killed that doctor at the end, he's terrible. It doesn't matter because the lights have already come up in the theater.
Exactly.
Whereas if he does kill Sophie, if he does, then we still need to enjoy his dance down the steps. We still need to listen to his monologue and stroke our chins as we listen to. We still need to do that stuff. But when he murders his doctor at the end, possibly murders his doctor at the end, at that point, it's like, well, this is the end of the film. We don't care if you turn on him now at all. The majority of what I've said here, or we've said here, the body of this seems incredibly negative, and that's a shame because I love cinema. It's like my favorite thing in the world. I love movies, and I want every film to be a 5-star film. But if you take away anything from this conversation, take away that we have a really interesting take on Joker, and it's kind of fascinating in its own way, and it was brought to life by a performer who raised himself above the material he was given to create this character. And I think it's always good to be able to walk away from a film, and even if the film to you is just kind of an average 3-star movie, go, but there was one element of it that was fucking gold. And in this movie, Phoenix is fucking gold. And because I always like to end on a positive, that's kind of the thing I want people to take away from my opinion of the film.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. There are a lot of mediocre films that are saved thanks to a brilliant performance. And earlier in the show, we mentioned Gladiator. That is absolutely one of them. I think Gladiator is an incredibly mediocre film, but Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix, of course, are amazing in it.
The only way this performance could have been better in this Joker movie was if Phoenix had grown a mustache and then painted white paint over it for every single scene.
On that note, Chris, I want to thank you for joining me for this episode of Spoilsport.
No worries. I love talking about fucking movies. So happy to be here.
I look forward to doing this again in the future. I don't know what film the next one's going to be.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
No, that's next year. We have Star Wars before that.
Oh, I'm not doing Star Wars. You think I'm going to get heat for what we said on this show? Wait until we have a review about a Star Wars movie.
Okay. I have a better idea. Instead of doing Star Wars, we'll just do a Spoilsport on cats.
Oh, I forgot that was coming out. Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, cats. Cats it is.
I'll be Mr. Mistopheles. He's a cat, right? I don't know.
I think so.